Ladies and gentlemen, big hairy news.
Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News. Kia ora, Chewy. How are you, love?
I am a very tired little Wookie. There's a little Wookie nest, and I hear the rain on the window, and it's very soothing. And so if I nod off, can someone just poke me to bring me back up? Oh, look
Thanks.
at that. Yeah.
Yeah. You've passed it on. No, we've got some builders working at this house this week, and quite often when I'm editing after the show, I don't get to bed until between midnight and 1, and builders like to be here banging downstairs at 7:30 in the morning. So I'm feeling, Should we just call it a night? I mean, there's not really that much to talk about today.
Everything seems to be working really well.
Yeah.
Cooler heads have prevailed.
Yeah.
Everybody's globally decided to stop being such a shithead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fade to
Good
black.
grief. Already got a super chat that's on fire. So maybe we do have to hang around for a while. David says the reason I'm not mocking David. I'm saying this is the on fire thing. The reason members of this government won't call out each other for corruption is that they might get called out for corruption themselves. It's as simple as that. I am rage. That sounds like something out of like one of the Thor, the gods of I am thunder, I am rage. Chewy's quivering beard is my spirit animal.
So that's the sort of energy. That's the energy that we're bringing tonight.
We have to match that, do we?
Okay.
Holy crap.
Yep.
All right. There you go. I'm up. Heaps going on tonight, guys. More topics than there are stars in the sky, and more topics than we've advertised as well, because Dunedin's still pumping hard in the news about this hospital thing. And in fact, some information that we got out on Monday night, not specifically that information, but some questions that we had answered on Monday night, other people are now asking, like, $3 billion for a hospital, where are your workings? And the government going, well, confidentiality with the contractors, we can't really say.
It's fucking commercially sensitive or something. I saw a stat mentioned about the studies that have been done into heated tobacco products. Did you know? Well, and I mean, I have no way of backing this up, but what I saw, the figure was mentioned that 99% of studies that have gone into heated tobacco products are from the industry. So
Incorrect.
Incorrect.
We are playing.
What's the number?
We are playing a conversation tonight. Yes, I have the number. We are playing a conversation tonight with an expert in cessation. Cessation from the UK, and I think he said of the 31 studies out there, about 20 of them are from the tobacco industry. So that's 2/3.
Okay. So that's still pretty high.
That's a lot.
But so I think the pressure that people are putting on Costello at the moment might be having an effect.
Yeah. So keep it up, Whānau. You know how to do it. I've already forgotten what I've talked to you about. So I'll just go through them again in case I've forgotten it. We're going to talk about that, the cessation expert on TVNZ this morning. And the big question is, will these heated tobacco products actually do what the government is promising us it will do? And guess what, Chewy? There has been some research into saying, does it support a cessation in smoking? There is research out there that says that. We'll look at that through the evening. We're also going to have a look at a story from last night, which we didn't get to because it came up quite late in the day. This idea that Health New Zealand, aka Grandmaster Lester, basically, Health New Zealand is urging the government to consider private-run public hospitals. Urgently consider. Urges the government to consider privately. Anyway, so my gut says with Health New Zealand, that means Lester Levy is urging the government because he's now sort of in charge over there. Yeah.
What an utterly unpredicted turn of events. I am shook.
Matthew Tukaki explains to Damien Grant what it means to be racist and what racism is. Have a bit of a look at that.
Did he start? I guess we'll find out. But did he start with telling Damien Grant that it's pronounced racist and not racist?
Yeah, I don't know where that comes from. Look, I'm the last person to correct anyone on their language, but yeah, it is funny. Like it's like when our look. I mean, I don't ever do it publicly. You know, the difference between less and fewer. But when I hit the Prime Minister of the country not knowing the difference between less and fewer, does frustrate me. You're supposed to be like the leader of this country and some big brain sort of thing.
Oh, speaking of the leader of this country, stay tuned later in the show, folks. A new cringe video has just dropped from his 7-member, $800,000 a year social media team. Have dropped a banger. You might as well put your chiropractor on speed dial because the cringe is strong. I'm going to play that one for you later on in the evening.
The cringe is strong with this one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So heaps going on tonight, guys. We're not going to stuff around, although it feels like we've already been stuffing around for a while. We're not going to stuff around anymore. We're going to get straight into it, and let's start off by having a bit of a look, Chewy, for people who haven't seen it. It wasn't obviously as picked up as much as the presidential debate. And on some level, it was a bit sort of ho-hum because it was normal. There was no one threatening to kill the other person. There was no cats and dogs being talked about being. It was a debate of the 1990s, how it used to be, kids. Let's have a look at some. There was one. Tim Walz seemed nervous to me. I don't know how much debating he's done in front of people before, but I think he started off being quite nervous. It seemed pretty obvious to me that he is maybe not someone who has those learned rebuts, you know, because a few times he was like, it wasn't bad, but it felt to me like he's not a natural, zing, bang, get it back, get you back kind of guy. Whereas JD Vance, you know, he is basically, he's slick. So it kind of started off, I thought, with Mr. Walz kind of behind the eight ball a bit. And then he kind of came out of his own a bit and he sort of, you know, kind of pulled even, I think. And then there's a zinger at the end. Not really a zinger, but a question that he asked at the end, which we'll show tonight, which I think actually put him over the top. I'd give the win to Walz, but being really honest with you, if someone, like just, but if someone said to me, well, I'd give the win to JD Vance just, I'd be like, yeah. Yeah, so it seemed pretty close. There was no big knockout. I tell you what, there wasn't. It felt to me like there wasn't a moment or something that happened that would cause anyone to shift their vote, right? Probably who came out of it best was JD Vance, because all he had to do was look like a normal part of the ticket that doesn't really dream about having sex with lounge furniture the whole night. And he did come out of it looking like just a quote-unquote normal politician. Yeah, I don't think, I said this last time and I was wrong, but I don't think this will move the needle that much. But it was an interesting thing to look at. Let's have a look at a few highlights from One News.
Kamala Harris and Donald Trump's two ICs have duked it out in the only vice presidential debate of the US election campaign. Tim Walz from the Democrats and the Republicans' JD Vance squared off in a civilized contest that focused on the issues. Kim Baker-Wilson reports.
How crazy is that? They focus on the issues, Chewy. Like, just how weird is that? Said as part of the headline because it's so strange these days.
The vice presidential debate.
VP running mates are usually the political attack dogs.
When we start to see that type of fickleness because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership, that Donald Trump is fickle.
And if Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now.
Yeah, this is something that I've talked about. I don't know if we'll talk about it here, Chewy, but the response to that, which no one's really doing, is to say, can you tell to me how much legislation Mike Pence got through? How much legislation did Mike Pence get through as the VP? Oh, none. Because why? Because that's not the role of the vice president. No one's been good at this. No one's been good in America at pushing back on this. They keep saying she's got all these ideas. Why isn't she doing them now? Well, how many policies and legislative changes did Mike Pence do? None. Why? You know, that's actually the response, and no one's doing it.
Joe Biden's still alive.
Yeah. Well,
that's the answer.
Well, you know, barely.
Theoretically
alive.
He's the concept of alive.
But the point being, it's actually the Republicans have done well with that line. it's a bit like when National Hair sold the line about 15-year-olds and their their efforts at school and their key markers at school. They sold it enough without an explanation that just became repetitive. That's what they've done with this, and there hasn't been good enough pushback from the media and from the Democrats saying, "Hang on, what did Mike Pence get through? Nothing." Yeah, because that's not the role of the vice president. So you continually saying, "Why hasn't she already done it?" The answer is because she's the vice president. That's not her role. Anyway, we'll keep going.
But for 90 minutes, the candidates hit more policy points than scored political points, articulating differing ideas on the economy.
Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China.
Immigration.
What do we do with
It's pronounced China. He hasn't got the new pronunciation guide, obviously.
Tim, I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants.
Abortion.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says.
And school shootings.
We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger.
Do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort?
Yeah, this is the strange thing about America. The way they get around school shootings is to make the school more impenetrable, not talk about the guns and the issues there. It's the weirdest. It's the weirdest thing in the world.
Thank you, Senator.
Only once did the moderators have to mute the mics.
To get to, Senator.
Those
We have
laws
so
have been on
much-
the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
we
CBP
want to have
One app has not been on the books since something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut.
Pundits afterwards calling it a civil, in-depth, policy-focused debate. For all the disagreement,
That's the pundit version of boring. I think that's what that means.
fair amount of agreement.
First of all, Governor, I agree with you.
I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said.
And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agreed.
I don't think Senator Vance and I are that far apart.
Their running mates remain tightly locked in a close contest as Election Day draws closer. Kim Baker-Wilson, One News.
So there was the report from One News. I want to show you one part of it, which I think is the one moment that I will give the win to Mr. Walz, and that was JD Vance refusing to say who won the last election.
To deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Which actually Vance is about to say, well, I'll shake your hand, but it's not about that because Trump won't. Trump won't do this. We all know that, but Vance seems, I don't want to say reasonable, but Vance says the right things on stage about shaking hands when it's done.
It's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country.
I just think for everyone tonight, and
remember, what he said is he gave over power, like everyone has done in the last 250 years, but he didn't come to the inauguration, which all other presidents have done when they've lost. There's lots of things he also didn't do. Even if you leave January 6th out of the question, he may have given over power, but he didn't do all the other things traditionally that the exiting president will do as well. So it's not quite as black and white as that.
I'm going to thank Senator Vance. I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement, but this is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
This is Tim Walz missed the beat here. He could have said, I'll answer that. No, now you answer mine. But he didn't quite come back in.
That is a damning non-answer.
Yeah. So there you go. That was I think the best kind of hit back either guy made, and that was quite towards the end. So I'd give it a Tim Walz, just by a whisker. I don't know if you saw much of it, Chewy, but that was sort of the sum total of it.
I didn't have much. I've seen it basically in clip form, so I haven't sat down and watched the whole thing yet. But
yeah,
I think that the real devastating thing here for American democracy and where they're at, right, is that everybody's comparing it to like, oh, well, yeah, JD Vance seems more reasonable. He's still saying the craziest lines, the just abject lies about immigration and all of this stuff. He's still that same weird fucking dude that can't interact with people.
Yeah.
But the lens that we have is that he's not as bad as Donald Trump because he can
100.
string a coherent sentence together.
100.
That's still dangerous.
Yeah. Yep. And look, one of the things that he said, and this is JD Vance, and a lot of Republicans are saying, and again, this is another talking point. They say, you know, Hillary Clinton questioned the election. You know, Democrats have questioned so many of these elections. And I think the point that not that they're missing it, I think they know this, is it's not that Donald Trump questioned the election, is that when he got to the end of the legal process of questioning it, he still didn't say he'd lost. And also, when they talk about Hillary Clinton saying that it was taken, Hillary Clinton still phoned Donald Trump and said, "You won, I lost." He still hasn't done that. So it's it's not the same. Other people have challenged results, but then they go through the process and then they accept. Al Gore probably should have been president. I mean, he's probably quite glad he wasn't because he missed 9/11 and he won an Oscar and a Nobel Peace Prize in that time period. But they say things at a headline level. You know, Democrats have challenged all sorts. Yeah, okay, sure, fine, but they always say I lost. They always concede on the night or the day after or 2 days after when all the results come in or when the challenge is finished. That's the big difference. He has never conceded and he still thinks either genuinely or because he's playing a role that he won. That's the difference, Joey.
I mean, it comes down, it's easy to say that you were robbed or the system is rigged or all of these things when the system over there is rigged. They have jury-rigged everything. They are really only contesting, 4 or 5 states at this point? The swing states.
7.
They're the only ones that
7,
matter.
Yeah. They've already got the score up. They've already got the scores up for them, 261 to 239 or something, and it's just got those last 7 or so left. Kiwi Bird makes a good point though.
What a joke.
Walz was also pretty good on. I think Walz was very good on abortion because you know you can be a stick with glasses and a Democrat and you'd still be better than anyone in the Republicans on abortion, and he was very good. And he made a very good point as well about trusting women and their health professionals, and that's kind of where he stayed. He almost stayed away from the kind of pro-life, pro-choice. It was just like, no, this is about trusting women. You know, this is what it's about. And they use some anecdotal evidence, and that's, you know, it's never the best thing in the world to use anecdotal stuff, but like we always say, anecdotal evidence often tugs at the heartstrings about women who died because they couldn't get an abortion, or who had to travel kind of 600 or 700 miles and almost died because they couldn't get an abortion. And so he was keeping on. I think he got kind of said at some stage when he got accused of being, you know, kind of pro. He goes, not pro abortion or pro whatever. He goes, no, I just trust women. So it's quite a good. Yeah, that's quite a good line.
That's a good line.
Yeah.
I trust women and I believe in healthcare. Is just that's the way. That's the one right there. I did see that Walz made some reasonably unforced errors.
I'm friends with school shooters. He said, I'm friends with school shooters.
The one that I saw was he was trying to make a valid point about the price of insulin previously over in America. And he said it was $800 a month, and it's I think he overestimated that by almost double. You know, just like if you're going to quote a number like that, you got to get it right.
He when he was talking about, he was asked why he changed his position on the semi-automatic weapons, AR-15s, that kind of stuff. And he said because he had a whole bunch of the people from Sandy Hook in his office, he met them all, and he said, I've become friends with school shooters. And obviously he was meaning with the families, the victims of school shooters. But that, if you look at right now on Twitter, those memes are obviously already going off. It's got him pictured in merry-go-rounds with school shooters and drinking drinks with school shooters, and it was a slip of the tongue that we know that Fox News will pick up on and run with, but that was a genuine slip of the tongue. It wasn't they're eating cats and they're eating dogs. Yeah, it was nothing like that. I think arsehole actually probably sums it up. I know a couch when I see one, and I saw one today. And Kooky Nick just says, am I late? I don't think you are actually. They came in at 9:04.
No, you're pretty on time there.
Yeah. All right. Hey, we're going to keep on trucking, and I'm going to show you a story that's not in the show notes. And it's not that we're just going, yay, it's about Dunedin. You know, like when every tourist comes to New Zealand and the first question you give them is, also, what do you think of New Zealand? We're not doing that. This is actually a really good indication of what this government's about and how they're operating by again saying there's no budget for this. Okay, what's the budget? 3 billion. Will he show us the numbers? No. But last time it was like 1.9 billion. Where's the extra billion from? No. Sensitive. Can't tell you. 3 billion, too much. So can you show us your workings? No. I'm in the process of getting a whole bunch of clips of things Luxton has said, and I have one somewhere which I haven't loaded up yet about being the most transparent government of all times. I'm still looking forward to that Uffendale report there, Chewy. I'm still looking forward to that one. Here you go. This is only a 2-minute clip about. So what's happening is people are now jumping on board saying, "Show us your workings, please," and they're not doing it yet.
I'm as frustrated as they are. That's the infrastructure minister's response to the tens of thousands of protesters.
If you're frustrated, Mr. Bishop, why don't you accept our invitation to come on and have a chat about it? Because we haven't heard back from your office. We're in Dunedin. Be nice to hear from you.
Angry at plans to downgrade the new Dunedin hospital. The government announced last week that the cost of the development had blown out to $3 billion and savings had to be made. But as Lisa Davies reports, the fight back is gathering momentum.
Yep.
Putting politicians on notice.
We're just getting started.
The next step.
Send an electronic postcard to the ministers.
Days after 35,000 rallied in anger, their battle cry ringing across the octagon.
The people of this region are hopping mad. They're steaming about this depreciation of the hospital that they've been waiting for so long.
There's a promise of a lot more pushback to come.
Mm-hmm.
This project is in people's hearts, and they will not let it be messed with.
It's in Pete Hodgson's heart too. The former Labour Health Minister has provided governance on the project since the outset.
Lopping even one story off the new tower block would mean the new hospital would have fewer beds than what we have now.
Did you get that? That's a really interesting point, and good use of the word fewer, Pete. Taking one story off, just one story, and it's got fewer beds than the current hospital. Just one story down. That's it. Done. It's not as viable anymore. That shows the margins that they're already looking with, even though 500 clinicians have given these recommendations.
He accepts the hospital will cost over $2 billion, but nowhere near the $3 billion the government's suggesting.
They've been caught being deceitful, and I think they should respond to being caught by putting out other information that they have.
The Rust Review's sections on costings were heavily redacted, so the government has not offered proof that Dunedin Hospital was going to cost that much.
Could you imagine, Chewy? Like, I struggle to believe that they're just lying. I mean, because maybe I'm a bit naive, but I struggle to believe that they think that they could just lie and not get caught. I think that they'll have it worked out, and we're going to show you what Rachel Brookings said on Monday night in a second. I think they will have it worked out to costing $3 billion, but there'll be a lot of fat in there, or there'll be a lot of potential costs or whatever in there. Because I'm sure the chat's going to tell me I'm naive any second now, but I just get the sense that you'd have to be an absolute moron to think eventually these numbers aren't going to come out. So if they've just redacted things and they're just lying, I don't think they'd do that. I don't know. Would they? What do you think?
Oh, I would love to know what these guys are going to do.
Yeah.
Like, it seems to me that they're pushing the boat out and seeing what the public's reaction to, and they're like, oh shit.
Yeah, they're right.
Shit. We've really fucking cooked this. And for people to turn around and specifically go, no, we've almost immediately identified several puffed pieces of this where you've just padded the numbers. And then the arguments against them changing things is just coming back to things that they have said. They have made statements. They have made promises. And even people going, why would you stop building it when you've started building it? Just keep going. Just do it. It's like digging a hole and then going, oh, this is hard. I'm not going to do it anymore.
They've dug the hole, then they've filled it with foundations, and they've put the pilings in place. It is a literal sunken cost already. Keep going. I mean, maybe a smart government would have just kept going, and then maybe getting close to the edge would go, actually, that new part of that building, we're just going to seal that off for now. We're going to come back to that in 18 months. They just seem so stupid that they put themselves in this position. Although, Chewy, you might be right. They might have gone, hey, you know what? It was rough for a second, but I think we've squeezed past with these ferries. Let's try the same with Dunedin Hospital, see what happens. I don't think so. Let's get back to Aisha.
The government insists it's been as transparent as possible, given the costings from the contractor.
There you go. There's a good shot from up the top of the current building. Having a look, see, literal foundations done, everything, and the actual building they've built is off to the right of that image there.
From the
actually, I think that's an older image.
Really?
That's an older image. The bit that you're looking at there, that's where the currently, or the outer shell,
no, you're probably right.
Current building is actually done.
Yep, because that's where Cello is. So this is the current building, but now here is looks like this. It's got all the bits and bobs there.
Contractor are commercially sensitive.
We're the ones who have inherited an absolute hospital pass from the previous government. We have publicly released all the information we have.
Not true.
He says one more document will be released in due course. The Health Minister posting on social media today.
That's not scaremongering, it's a financial reality. We don't have an unlimited pool of money.
But the leaders of the South
nobody
are
says that you
planning
do.
a face-to-face.
Various mayors from the region, they're steaming mad too, and they want to go to Wellington.
And this is good. You're now hearing it, mayors from the region, because this is not a Dunedin-only hospital. We've been saying this all the time through, so it's good that the mayors are uniting around the region, 100%.
And make their position felt.
They're not willing to take no for an answer.
So there you go. There's the story, Chewy. And this is all about the costings, right? So why don't we just go back and have a look? We had the Labour MP for Dunedin, Rachel Brooking, with us on Monday night. And this is a clip which she talks about what the costings are, how they get to $3 billion. Let's have a look.
And now what we see is this totally fabricated number of $3 billion.
Yeah, what is it all about? Because you guys are saying, where's this number from? You guys are in the house. Those of us kind of morons out here just hearing you guys, we're like, well, yeah, we haven't heard either. How do we explain this? What are you guys thinking?
Well, there's this report here, the Rust report that was done with the Infrastructure Commission, and it's an absolutely fine report. But what it says is, it says some quite technical things about, maybe the government.
Oh, that's turned into Inception all of a sudden, isn't it? Us watching something else. Good grief. And can I say, just a side note, the Rust report should have had an orange cover. I'm just saying, should have had an orange cover. Would have made much more sense.
The structure of the new build could change a bit, and maybe there are some risks that need to be considered some more. But then it says three things. It says, well, there's also these three issues that haven't been dealt with. One of them is the pathology lab.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is an extra 250 car parks. And what is it? And the third one is what happens with the existing hospital, so the old hospital.
Yep.
Does that have to be refurbished somehow? Does that get sold off to someone else? What do we do with that? And so they've saying, well, this could lead to a lot more money, but it might not as well, because of course most pathology labs are private already, so you can get private providers to pay for any additional buildings there. Car parking is often a private thing as well, and it's queried the need for 250 additional car parks.
So hang on. So that $3 billion is based on what could happen if we paid for the pathology lab, if we paid for the parking, and if we refurbished the old hospital to do something with it. That's the $3 billion. So in other words, if they sold the old hospital to a developer who turned it into apartments for students, there'd be no cost there.
That's right. That's exactly right. And if somebody else did the car parks, then nothing there is.
The other thing that I found interesting today, Chewy, is I did a bit of looking around on how much it costs, how much the car parks make. And I haven't got it with me, but I found an old listing. Someone was selling a car park building in 2021 in Wellington. Had 300 car parks. So not too far off what they're talking about, 200 and whatever it was, 50. $1.2 million a year it took in. So actually, you think about a 100-year hospital or even a 50-year hospital, you know, that car park, if they built it themselves, actually you can think about paying for itself. Again, if you did sell off the old hospital to make into university apartments, there's actually income coming from those things they could as well if they wanted to. So even if they did build the car park themselves and got the income from it, sold the old hospital, turned it into apartments, that's actually that's a lump sum of money coming into them as well. I'm fascinated that the party of business doesn't really seem to know what they're doing with this, Joey.
Oh, it's remarkable. Okay, so there's been discussion in Dunedin for near 15 years that we need somewhere to put a decent 5-star hotel.
Yep.
And there's been multiple attempts to do it, and they're always in the wrong place. They clash with heritage buildings, or the wrong, the wrong type for the area, or whatever. And during this whole time, whenever someone put one of those plans out, I was always like, they're going to get rid of the old hospital at one point. It's right in the CBD. It's not near any heritage buildings that it's really going to affect. It's a big site. That's where you put it. That's where you put it. It's prime real estate. The only cost of the government would be, I don't know, disassembling the building, but not a refurbishment.
Yeah.
But that's crazy. You have an entire city block that you can sell now. And exactly as you said, whenever they brought up car parking, I'm like, building a car park is a revenue maker.
Yeah.
Like, even if you went half of it is reserved for the hospital, for patients, visitors, and staff, the rest of it is making money. So if we don't have enough money to build the hospital, why don't we build in a revenue maker in it as well?
Yeah.
No, we'll let the private market do that. Okay. Fact is that there's quite a big car park not more than a block away from that hospital.
Yeah.
I use it every day. It's half empty all the time. It's brilliant. But yeah, it party of business, short-term thinking, not seeing any opportunities. It's great. There's still the party of business. Innovation, money.
I think what dovetails into this quite nicely actually is the idea about hospitals and what we're going to do with hospitals, because Health New Zealand, I think that means Lester Levy, is urging the government to consider allowing private sector to help build and possibly run hospitals. It's funny how this conversation's come out like in the same week that we're talking about what's happening in Dunedin. And I'll just say again, Health New Zealand saying this, Chewy. This story is actually from last night, but let's have a listen to wrap up this part of the conversation.
Te Whatu Ora Health New Zealand is suggesting the government considers allowing private companies to build and potentially help run.
Just remind me, Chewy, that Lester Levy dude, what's his background in?
Private healthcare, Pat.
Oh,
writing articles.
That's a coincidence,
about private healthcare and privatizing healthcare.
It's almost as much as a coincidence about an ex-tobacco lobbyist looking after tobacco laws and a former gun lobbyist being in charge of things like the gun registry laws. It's kind of, I guess we should be, I think we should be very grateful that people are using their past experience and bringing it into the public sector. So thank you, National. Well done. Well done.
I especially like the fact that he was part of a board and then they sacked the board and kept him on.
Yeah.
It's great. Like there's not so much a perception of a conflict of interest, but a 4-foot sign that follows him around all the time that says, I have massive conflicts of interest.
Massive something. Let's keep going.
Public hospitals. In addition to the new Dunedin Hospital, more than a dozen other large health projects are classified as having significant risks. Jessica Roden explains.
This was Nelson Hospital in the 70s. The same building still in use today. And up and down the country from Dunedin to Whangarei, the story is the same.
We are unbelievably cramped for space in the wards, in the ED, and in outpatient settings. So it's tight.
Dozens of hospital buildings are in line to be rebuilt or upgraded. Earlier this year, Health New Zealand told the minister, given the scale of the investment required, other financing arrangements may be needed. Build and lease back arrangements where private companies own the buildings would free up funds. They also floated public-private partnerships, saying they're widely used overseas.
PPPs is a whole spectrum of how the...
I'm glad they're starting to look to Australia to help them tell us what we should do. We should talk at some stage with this government about what Australia does with capital gains taxes and stuff, because, you know, if it's working over places like that, maybe we should look at it.
Public sector could work with the private sector from that side of it. So there are many different options in there.
I won't reiterate all the advantages and disadvantages. The most obvious is the freeing up of capital that the Crown can then deploy elsewhere.
Capital that's...
And remember, that capital to deploy elsewhere is landlords and tax cuts. So this is... I'll be honest with you, Joe, a little side note here. I've always been of the opinion that selling or keeping state assets, it's not actually a good or bad either way. It is what's it going to be used for. So when John Key was in and they sold half of a bunch of things, they sold 49% in some power companies, and I think here in New Zealand as well. They were saying they were using that, and I can almost remember it word for word. They were talking about paint and refurbishment of hospitals, ironically, and of some schools. And so it was all very much things that we need to get done, which we need to get it done again in 25 years. So my perspective then was these state assets aren't worth selling because you're putting them into the money from that into a temporary solution. Like if you sell $1 million state house that's not impacting a family who's living there, and you can build 4 for it, there's a case to answer for. You know, you can actually work it out. What are we getting for selling this state asset? Under the last government, we got jack shit for them selling 49% in a bunch of stuff. And I kind of think the same, whether it's a state asset that we own or we sell, it's what we get for it in return. In this situation, it appears like we don't get anything. We just give a big job to a private company, and then we pay them, 3x, 4x, what it costs for them to build as we lease it back over the following 50 years. That seems like an unwise idea to me.
Yeah, it definitely reeks of we have some people waiting in the wings to make some money.
Yeah.
I don't think this is benevolent. I don't think this is a good line of inquiry to pursue. I think this is just death by inches in getting private healthcare into New Zealand. And it's been driven by people who have been very, very clear they want to privatize healthcare in New Zealand.
Yep. All right, let's see how this wraps up. 60 seconds.
Needed. Much to the South's dismay, last week it was revealed Dunedin Hospital will be downgraded after a budget blowout. But it's not the only large project
that they won't show us and won't commit to have the workings be made public.
With issues. As of March, 34 projects were green or on track. 22 projects were amber, meaning there are some risks, and 17 were red, meaning there are significant risks.
Well, it's a scarier number of projects that are at risk, and it's all about choices. The government needs to make the choice to invest properly in health infrastructure.
Many of the details of the red projects are redacted, but cost and scope are concerns for the Whangarei Hospital redevelopment. That's led to concern it too could be downgraded.
There wasn't any hardship quickly finding the money for tax cuts and benefits to landlords.
Bingo.
But now there is a great deal of trouble affording healthcare infrastructure.
And of course, just remember, we all know this, but the people who are more likely to use the public health system are the vulnerable and the poor, more likely to. So the private health system that's already in New Zealand is fine. People who can afford it, pay for it. Fine, all well and good. The people who can't afford it and the people who have to have no other choice but to use public health are the poorest and the most vulnerable. The people who aren't going to get refunds, reimbursements because they're not landlords, the people who aren't going to get big, massive tax cuts because they're not in the top 1%. So it's just another hit that'll eventually hurt the vulnerable and the poor more and disproportionately to anyone else in the community. I'll just do the last 10 seconds in case there's something true, then I'll step back and let you explode.
I mean, that's the irony.
While the minister opened a new children's ward in Rotorua today, there doesn't seem to be a lot else to celebrate. Jessica Roden, One News.
All right, sir. I've had my chip go. You have a go. Yours, sir.
I love that you're talking about, yes, the poorer, more vulnerable need public health care.
Yeah.
I was watching the working group last week, and they had what's that guy's name? CB from Voyager, the guy that self-created rich man, that sort of thing. He was going on about the fact that he had to be rushed to Middlemore or one of the Auckland hospitals anyway, and was absolutely raving about the fact that he got really well looked after, and they're doing hard work under difficult conditions. I was like, motherfucker, you sit there saying that you don't. You get taxed too much. You don't want to pay enough tax, and we should do more stuff like America. You had the option and the money to have private health care, and you're taking up a slot in a public hospital that you don't want to pay for.
Yeah.
I as you said, I'm always close to blowing a foo-foo valve. I very, very nearly blew a foo-foo valve there. I also like the fact that they're saying we need to look at what Australia is doing with public-private partnerships. Should we have a wee look at that, Pat? Should we have a look at how that's going?
It would be fair. It would be fair to look at it.
It would be fair, right? Because the Australians, they had some really good ideas, and we should really look at it. August 2019, abandoned public-private model at Northern Beaches Hospital. Doctors urge state government. This seems to be where we are now. Doctors have called upon the New South Wales government to abandon public-private partnerships. Thanks, the Herald, for popping that up. Blaming the controversial model for fundamental flaws, cost-cutting, and secrecy. Does that sound familiar? Does it sound just a little bit? Someone else is reading their head. So let's flash forward a little bit.
Yeah.
It's oh god, they're hitting me with a subscribe.
Is that the Herald?
They're hitting me with this is the Sydney Morning Herald.
Bastards.
Anyway, the headline for that: Healthscope's financial woes cast doubt on public-private partnership model. They owe the state millions, hundreds of millions of dollars that the state's not getting because it's got to go privately. And then also from this year, April of this year, hospital criticised over cuts. Northern Beaches Hospital come under fire from local MPs over cuts to services. Sydney Morning Herald report, which has not been challenged by the hospital operator Healthscope, said that the cuts would be made to nursing staff in the mental health unit, and that shifts would be cut from both mental health and maternity wards. Fantastic.
Yeah, they're not important at all. There's that, and those people who are pregnant or who have mental health issues, just for too long, they've been getting it too good. So it's good we take them down a peg or two.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Profit focused organizations can't do healthcare. They can't. You can't monetize.
It's a service.
It's a service.
Yeah.
And this thing where they go, we've lost all of this money. It goes away in healthcare because the benefits to it are down the track. They're getting workers working and not being sick. People that are not working and sick are bad for the economy. But you will never make a profit out of a hospital unless you are doing something truly, truly evil. And we can look at the model. We can look at the pathway that other right-wing Tory fucks have done. The absolute hatchet job that the Conservatives did on the NHS is the roadmap. That's the aim. Our National Party had very close ties with the Tories about this sort of stuff. They've been reading their homework. We can see that it's been trialed and failed as predicted in our nearest neighbour. And then if you want the absolute gold standard of why the fuck we should avoid this, you look at America's healthcare system.
Yeah.
Where nothing is true. Everybody's clipping the ticket and nobody is getting the benefits for it. Some of the most expensive healthcare on the planet for the worst outcomes, unless you got a shit ton of money in your back pocket. And I really stress this, that I think New Zealanders would agree that if we're going to go down to that track, that is going to be what brings people out onto the streets.
Yeah, we saw that.
That is general strike time.
And again, it just reminds
want to bring this in.
It reminds me of how we often say on this show, name for me one right-wing policy, one piece of right-wing legislation that this country en masse holds on to like it does a bunch of left-wing ones. Social housing, public health, working for families, interest-free student loans, all bought in from the left. And now the country will go out and march for one of those left-wing policies, and we saw it on Saturday, We saw it on Saturday, a mayor in Dunedin who we criticised firmly for having his part of politics not agreeing with us, all the way from that through to blue-haired hippies on the other side, all in one voice, shouting and singing for a left-wing policy that this country will not let go of. And that's the difference in politics. It's the left make policy and the right respond to policy. I'm still going to put the challenge out there. Show me one right-wing policy, one policy that's been put in by a right-wing government that this country holds on to as a foundational thing that we all must have. You'll struggle. Anywho.
Yeah, I think, well, what I hope is happening here is that our mayor and the other southern mayors are reaching out to the mayors of Nelson, of Northland, on the east coast and the North Island, all of these hospitals that are clearly under the axe at this point, and they are talking to each other.
Yep. Do the councils give anything to central government? Can we withhold funds? Can councils say, I'm not giving you your dividend? Do they ever do that? I don't know how it works. Because that's the way they could do it. The band together and say, no, we're not giving you our dividend anymore. I don't know what councils do, but if they do that.
I would imagine that councils would be very, very effective at the old work to rule sort of thing. Of like, yeah, okay, you're making us do this, but we're certainly not going to hurry. We're going to lock these things up in committee for forever.
Anna, oops, late again. Oops, I'm late again. Hear that song? 1997 or something. JK just saying, Pat, let me introduce you to Trump. That's me saying I don't believe that they won't be able to make the numbers work, even if they're, maybe. Dropping just 1 or 2 floors will cause Dunedin Hospital new build to breach its resource consent conditions to land helicopters. Source is Tori Mihaka. There you go. So I don't know if they're literally saying we're going to take a story off or not. I'm not sure about that. But if they do, there you go. There's a very good putback. JC and the Pigeon Cats, do they have a mate lined up? Question marks. What you were saying, Chewy. Create the crisis, then offer privatisation as a solution. This government makes me angry on the daily. We've been saying that since these guys got in. When they're in opposition, they step back and they say government doesn't work. When they get into government, they break government. And then whilst in government, they step back and they go, see, we told you it didn't work. Here's the solution, privatisation. Matt Hunter, privatise it all, and they leave politics on a personal win, and then go get a big fat handshake from a particular board somewhere.
Well, this is one of the reasons that probably Michael Woodhouse doesn't want to talk to us. He's being a gigantic coward, but he also works for a private healthcare organisation. He works for Forte Health. So, I mean, this seems to be a golden pillow for a lot of these guys.
Prepaying for a 50-year capital asset is ludicrous. Borrowing for it makes sense as it will amortize. Is that right? Amortize. Not sure what that word is. The cost over the life of the hospital.
Yeah, it's like buying a house. You don't buy it cash. You go, like, governments can get just enormous amounts of money for not much at all. Like, it's this whole fear of borrowing, and National are going to just bang that drum that we're in terrible shape because of our debt. Now, internationally, we're not even close to being in trouble. Not even close. It's just that they trust that the people that are hearing them say that will not look into it any further, or if they do, they won't understand. 100%. Because it's not like balancing a household budget. Well, it kind of is, because you didn't pay for your house in cash. If you need to replace a roof, you're probably not going to pay that in cash.
And it's always cheaper today. I mean, how many people are sitting in houses now that they paid $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 for, which are now worth $700,000, $800,000, $900,000, $1 million bucks? So building it now, even borrowing to build it now, and you go, oh my gosh, you only paid $3 billion for a hospital, cost $10 billion now to build them. So that sort of thing as well.
Well, that's the other line that they're using, right? Is that this would be the most expensive hospital in the Southern Hemisphere. Well, Australia's building 2 at the moment that are both around the $3 billion mark. So that's bullshit as well.
Yeah, and we haven't seen the $3 billion mark yet anyway. Having 7 public hospitals leased to private companies was an ACT campaign policy. Was it, Frosty? There you go. Someone wants to know where Jonathan Coleman is. Brian wants to know where Jonathan Coleman is. Thank you for the super chat. Frosty again. If you're on the waiting list for too long, the public system would just move you to a private hospital to cut down waiting lists because targets. Well, I mean, that's not a bad result though. If you get put private to help speed it up,
well,
that's
Well,
that's
you
bad.
say that, but that means that the health system is paying a private provider, paying them the big dollars.
Sure,
so
fair.
this, you end up in a cycle, right? You're constantly paying for people to go private. You're spending the money that you could be using in your own healthcare system.
Mm.
Like, we shouldn't need to do this as a regular order of business.
Gold for $5. Thanks for the super chat. Rimmer wants sick kids in school. Sick people should be at work, not in hospitals. Interesting. And Wooming says government doesn't pay rates. Send a rates bill to them. There you go, Wellington City Council. How much rates would you get for that beehive-ish type building? That'd be worth a look at. Right, let's move on. We are going to go to the story, Chewy, because you mentioned this at the start of the show, and there's some evidence for you in here. I like Baba's message here. I quit smoking last year after 6 years of 2-pack a day. Whoa. Couldn't have done it without a vape. Heated tobacco is a scam, taking us backwards. Oh, where'd that go?
Oh, sorry, I clicked. Sorry.
Taking us backwards. Hashtag vape like cig lighter. Okay. And so on breakfast this morning, we're starting it from 0000. So I'll just let Jenny May explain the whole thing. I'll just sit back and I'll watch her go.
Mystery surrounds the government's independent advice on tobacco control. Associate Health Minister Casey Costello slashed tax on heated tobacco products in half. Despite warnings from Treasury, it'll play directly into the hands and profits of big tobacco. But the minister backs HTPs as a tool to meet Smoke-Free 2025 and says she has independent advice to prove it. Except she's not willing to reveal where that advice comes from. In the quest for some clarity, we've gone to Dr. Leon Shihab, a smoking cessation expert from the University College of London. Good.
National's worst nightmare, a smoking cessation expert.
Morning, and thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning. Well, it's good night here, but good morning.
Yes. Now, you've done a comprehensive summary of all the available research when it comes to these tools. What did your first analysis reveal about the health impacts of heated tobacco products?
Okay, so I contributed to 2 systematic reviews. One was published in the Cochrane Library, where we looked at available studies. And the first thing to point out is there are not that many studies around, and that most of the studies that we looked at were in fact sponsored by the tobacco industry. What it shows is, as you would expect, because heated tobacco products don't burn tobacco, they heat them up, they do expose users to lower levels of toxicants and cancer-causing chemicals. But these studies are quite short-term, and they're usually conducted within a laboratory in a confined environment. And for that reason, we actually decided to do an independent study to assess the likely health effects of heated tobacco products. I can tell you a bit about those. The study basically looked at seasoned long-term users of heated tobacco products and compared their levels of exposure to harmful excipients among e-cigarette users, as well as with people who don't use anything at all. And what we find is it does show reductions in toxicant levels, but they're not as great the reductions as you would see with e-cigarettes. So for one of these cancer-causing chemicals, they're called tobacco-specific nitrosamines, we see levels that are higher than you would see in e-cigarette users who are long-term users or people who don't use anything at all.
So
long story short, they're not as good as e-cigarettes or vapes, but they are a bit better than cigarettes. But what he's saying is the message we're being told as to how much better they are, that's a bit of an exaggeration.
From the research that you did from independent studies came the results being that e-cigarettes were better than HTPs when it comes to toxins. Is that correct?
That's right. So you do see a reduction for people who use heated tobacco products, but they're not as great as you see with people who use e-cigarettes. And the key difference, of course, between e-cigarettes and heated tobacco products is that they still contain tobacco. E-cigarettes contain nicotine, medicinal nicotine, whereas heated tobacco products, they use little sticks. They're called heats in the IQOS system. I think that's available or was available in New Zealand. And they contain tobacco. And obviously, therefore, it's a bit more complex what people inhale when they use these devices.
So there's the first point, that then the e-cigarettes are better chemically, and they don't they're better for getting off than. So it goes cigarettes, heated tobacco products, e-cigs or vapes as well. Now this continues on for another 90 seconds. I'm just going to, not even 90 seconds. I'm going to keep going because this part of the conversation, does heated tobacco products help people come off cigarettes? Remember, that's the whole thing they're talking about. I will look at any and every alternative to smoking. So does these things actually help people give up cigarettes? That's really the main question.
So I want to go to the second part, or the review that you looked into, and that was around smoking cessation. So what did you find out from that? And, you know, whether HTPs, heated tobacco products, help people come off tobacco smoking?
Yeah, well, that's quite a complicated question to honestly answer. The Cochrane review that we conducted actually didn't find many studies at all that looked at this, and there was very limited evidence that they're helpful to help people stop smoking. There is some studies that have, they're not necessarily published yet, in the International Tobacco Control Project, which has looked at the use of heated tobacco products among dual users over a long time period, over say 3 years. And what they find is they're quite sticky. In our own,
so dual users, meaning cigarettes and still smoking, but also using them over a long time, and who are prolonged users, is what he said.
A laboratory study, we asked people how addictive they thought heated tobacco products were, and they indicated that they were quite addictive to them. And what it suggests is a certain stickiness, that people are probably less likely to stop smoking with them, but rather it may prolong use of other products, including cigarettes. And so compared with e-cigarettes, again, the evidence is much stronger there that they actually help people to stop smoking. Whereas for heated tobacco products, most of the evidence that is being reported usually comes from the tobacco industry. And if you look at independent studies, there's relatively little evidence, certainly from randomized controlled trials, that they are effective.
There you go. So again, we're not going to use absolutes like they're useless, but very clear in the research, independent research, that they are not particularly good at stopping people from smoking, and they are likely to keep people either on the HTPs or smoking as they go along. There's two more short clips. They're only 60 seconds each. But do you want to jump into that first of all, Chewy?
Everything I've read about these products just makes them sound like a shit product.
Yeah.
Like they're just not good at anything that they're supposed to do. It just seems to be a way of like getting tobacco into places where tobacco can't be now. Like it's not. We've done decades of work making smoking not socially acceptable.
Yeah.
And this is a way to keep tobacco limping along, because most people will assume it's a vape.
The next part of the conversation, are heated tobacco is more likely to keep people smoking over e-cigarettes or not? Is it more likely to keep people smoking? Again, this is what we want to know. I'm open to any and every alternative to smoking, as the Prime Minister's been saying.
Well, then we decided to do our own study in a laboratory-based environment to recruit people who have been using these products for a long time. And we asked them various things, including how addictive do you think this product is? And what we find is that compared with the people who use e-cigarettes, those who said who used heated tobacco products said that it was more addictive for them. The other thing that we also found is that people seem to maintain a higher smoker identity. And that's quite important, because a smoker identity is something that you want to ideally lose in order to stop smoking completely. Whereas it seems that because behaviorally...
That's important. It's about the identity, the cool factor. So what he's saying is people who use the HTPs, they don't lose their smoking identity. They don't lose the quote-unquote cool factor. They're still able to do it versus a vape. It's a different vibe.
higher smoker identity. And that's quite important because a smoker identity is something that you want to ideally lose in order to stop smoking completely. Whereas it seems that because behaviorally, heated tobacco products are quite similar. You don't use them continuously as you would an e-cigarette use these sticks like it would use a cigarette. People report that their smoke identity is quite strong still, which would suggest to me that they're probably more sticky in terms of the behavioral component because people, it reminds them of cigarettes, and so they may maintain continued cigarette smoking compared with e-cigarettes where people say, well, my smoke identity is more or less gone, I'm a vapor now. And so they may be less likely to therefore relapse back to smoking after stopped smoking with e-cigarettes.
So that's an interesting thing. That talks about, there's addictions that are chemical, there are addictions that are habitual. Using these, appears that the research is saying, using these, people are still smokers. They still keep the identity of being a smoker. And it's something that keeps them smoking. There's one more bit I'm going to play you. It's only 60 seconds. This is the hard, cold fact, right? This is what we want to know. Full stop, what we want to know. And you can see that Jenny is very much wanting to get the answer out there of, does the evidence say heated tobacco supports cessation in smoking? So does it work? Does it support cessation in smoking? Because if it doesn't, this is all for naught.
This to you. Is there sufficient independent evidence to support claims that heated tobacco products help reduce smoking rates?
I would argue no, there isn't. I did mention another study that we undertook where we looked at population level data. So we looked, for instance, at the use of heated tobacco products in Japan, where they're very popular. And what we see is as there's an increase in the use of heated tobacco products, there's a decrease in the use of cigarettes. But interestingly enough, there's no association with smoking cessation as such. What it means is that people probably start replacing some of the cigarettes they smoke with heated tobacco products, but they don't necessarily come off cigarettes completely. And that's important because even low-level use of cigarettes has very serious health implications. So, for instance, the greatest risk increase when it comes to smoking cigarettes for cardiovascular disease is going from not smoking a cigarette at all to one cigarette. And, the further increase in risk if you smoke 1 or 10 cigarettes is relatively less important. So it's very important for people to stop smoking completely.
So there you go. So heated tobacco products are more likely to keep people smoking than e-cigarettes. It keeps people looking like, feeling like, having the habits of a smoker. And unless basically you give up smoking, any kind of smoking is going to be detrimental to you. Now, Chewy, I'm also going to play a bit, not right now, we're going to chat now. I'm going to play a bit, which is the story about Casey Costello on One News tonight. But that's the clips from the expert, giving us these research. Happy for you to jump in now. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I just think this is just stacking on and piling up that this is a bullshit clearance product that a big tobacco giant has a monopoly on and keeps getting shut down in other countries because they picked the wrong product.
Yeah.
Like it is just hopefully the dying gasps of a tobacco giant.
Yeah. Cancer-ridden gasps. One of the stranger conversations I saw tonight, and we're going to play it now for you off One News, was we played some stuff yesterday from the Prime Minister who was talking about, we're doing this for 12 months, we're doing this for 12 months. There was actually legislation that passed yesterday that made a whole bunch of these HTPs, the heated tobacco products, illegal. It's almost like the Prime Minister didn't know. And Casey Costello didn't tell him, just like she hasn't told him about her independent research. And TVNZ actually went out to see if they could buy some of these illegal HTP products, and let's pick up the story from there.
There's concern banned heated tobacco devices are still being sold after new rules came into force yesterday. The minister who cut taxes for the smoking gadgets says she remains convinced they can help people quit cigarettes, but continues to feel the heat herself.
Important, right? Because she said quit. She said quit cigarettes. The research that we just heard said you might find some people, smoke less. That's not what she's saying. She's not saying less. She's not saying smoke fewer cigarettes. Less smoking, fewer cigarettes. She's saying quit. So she's made that yardstick, right? Quitting smoking altogether. The research that we've just heard about doesn't say that. It says maybe people will smoke less and replace some of those smoking with the HTP, but it doesn't talk about them quitting cigarettes. So if their place had been, look, if a smoker just smoked one less cigarette, that would be worth it. That's not the yardstick they've set. They've set quit. And so it's important we hold them to that.
Senior political reporter Benedict Collins has developments.
These heated tobacco devices should no longer be on the shelves. Tough new rules to stop youth vaping means devices must now be childproof and have removable batteries. Despite fines of up to $400,000, it's claimed they're still being widely sold.
So it seems that either the stores don't understand the requirements or they're simply not following through and continuing to sell them anyway.
One News went undercover today to see whether we could purchase the now banned device. It didn't take long.
So what did you manage to buy in there? So what we've bought is one of these IQOS Illuma 1 vapes, which is the heated tobacco products. So those were the ones that should have been off the shelves yesterday.
The store owner later said they'd been told of the changes and sold it to us by accident.
Right.
To be fair, just yesterday the Prime Minister was publicly talking the products up in the hope they'll help people quit ciggies.
We're going to try it. We're going to try heated tobacco products just for 12 months to see how it goes.
But these now banned devices were the only ones available here.
Casey Costello has made a fool of the Prime Minister.
Labor can't believe the Minister didn't let her boss know.
She's either misled him by not saying about what was really going on with these products, or she's incompetent.
I wasn't aware that they had the products that were on the market were not going to be compliant with the 1st of October changes.
Yeah. So that's terrifying. That's terrifying. The minister in charge of regulations around smoking and vaping was not aware that these devices were not allowed to be sold. The person in charge was not aware. Incompetence, thy name is?
Or she's incompetent.
I wasn't aware that they had the products that were on the market were not going to be compliant with the 1st of October changes.
Yeah. So she wasn't aware, Chewy. There was products on the market now, and she wasn't aware there was products on the market that weren't going to be compliant. The person making the rules wasn't aware.
I don't know if I believe that, Pat.
Oh, really?
Because she was asking for an extension on those changes that Labor were bringing in. She wanted to extend that out to give another 12 months of that product before they brought in those rules about removable batteries and childproof things. So she fought against this thing that she's saying that she was unaware of.
Let's do this. Why don't you have a search, see if you can find that story, whilst we go to the end of this story, and we'll see if we can do it. Here we go.
I mean, shouldn't you have been aware of that, though? Because you've just given these heated tobacco products a big tax break, and now they're off the market. I mean, that's kind of your job, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I'm confident that they'll replace with a product that will be compliant.
What leads you to that confidence, Minister? What is the metric you're using to measure whether you have confidence in all of these shops obeying the rules?
Debate about how safe heated tobacco products actually are, and whether they help people quit smoking. The Minister says she's seen advice that they are effective.
And that will be released. I mean, that's all. There's no issue with that at all.
Yeah.
And
Can you
this
just
isn't.
tell us now which studies they were?
I don't have. I mean, I can refer it to you. I don't know that off the top of my head.
But it'd be good in order for us to fact check and check out what you're saying.
There is nothing being hidden here. There's nothing being hidden here.
Except for the report. Because you can hide something. So, Chewy, I'm hiding from you what's in my hand right now. This is currently hidden. Doesn't mean I'm not going to show you, but at the moment it's hidden. So there is something that's hidden right now. It's the report. Even if you show us the report, currently it's hidden. That's what the word means.
And it's just a say. There is nothing being hidden here. There's nothing being hidden here.
But if they're just studies, you can just send us the links. Or
yeah, okay, we can keep answering the same question. You will get the information.
We'll let you know when we do. Benedict Collins, One News.
There you go, Chewy. Now you dropped out for some of that.
Product is. Look at how shit that product is. It looks like you're literally just stuffing a normal cigarette into some sort of device.
It does make me think. You can see why people don't lose the vibe of smoking, because it looks like a filter from a cigarette. It looks like you've pushed a cigarette into something and you're smoking a cigarette. So you could because so for your lips it feels like a cigarette. So you can see how people don't then get away from feeling like they're smokers. So I get it. You can see it in the research. You can see it in the imagery.
So you gave me some homework there.
Yeah. Do we get anything? I was fact checking you, Chewy. Live. We'll do it live.
I was promised that there would not be any fact checking.
That was so funny. We left that out from today's debate. Oh my gosh. Oh, so now we're fact checking, are we? That was very funny. Sorry.
So in this delightful story, vape stores caught selling non-compliant heated tobacco products. Basically, exactly what that that story we just had is. Costello tried to have the regulations delayed for 2 years. However, Cabinet only agreed to a 6-month delay from the original date of 21st of March. So if she's saying that she's unaware of it, then was she unaware of what she was fighting? And was she unaware of the fact that she lost? Does she know where she is right now?
How
many fingers am I holding up?
What
is the phone number for Philip Morris?
Does being a tobacco lobbyist affect cognition? Maybe that's what's happened here. Maybe there's something that's not working out. But there you go, Fano. This is what we do, mate. We'll check the facts, even we'll check ourselves. Correct. So she knew about it in March, and she's forgotten about it now. Good on you, love. Some super chats. Tawhiri. I sadly don't think Nats will be a one-term government if Chippy still leads Labour. Even some in Labour don't think he's progressive enough or consistent. Well, it was interesting hearing, I mean, we all think. We could say the name at the same time, but we won't because we have a delay and I say it, then Chewy says it after me and it doesn't sound right. But we all think that Kieran should probably be the next leader. Oh, there's my camera going as well, brother. Kieran should be the next leader, but Kieran says doesn't want to do it. But then again, so did Chloe. I don't 100% agree, but I think they'd be stronger under potentially someone else. I mean, once you've lost, you do have a little bit of that stink on you. Mind you, Helen Clark lost once and then came back to be a 3-time Prime Minister. Sorry, Jerry.
I like Chippy. I genuinely like him. I enjoy his vibe and that sort of thing. Is he what Labour needs at the moment? That's a difficult question to answer.
Yeah.
Look, I've said this a lot of times. I want to see more attack dog. I want to see... Chippy always comes across quite reasonable in his stand-ups, no matter what he's saying. I want someone that is steamed. I want someone who is angry about what this government is trying to do, because I'm angry. There's a lot of people that are angry about what these guys are doing. And it needs to be someone that reflects that rage that is building in this country, but does it with accurate numbers and just because if it's that combination, if it's that vibe and just absolutely unimpeachable information and knowledge, then the current government can't fight back against that because they're in utter shambles.
Yeah.
Can Chippy do that? I don't know.
Yeah, well, time will tell. Time will tell. Ian says, nice use of less versus fewer. Thank you. I'll just read some fewer messages next time. That was right as well, but it's clunky. Casey Costello is a synonym for incompetent, says Kiwi Bird. Thank you for your super chat. Wu Ming says, and the hole Costello is digging is now how big? Thank you for the super chat, Wu Ming. Matt also says, openly wear your Philip Morris gang patch, Minister. Thank you for the super chat. What's that? It's a. I'm looking at the photo, the image there. The image is a octopus.
It's an octopus.
It's a wee little octopus. Just saying, $5. I've received advice. A prince wants to give me money. And then last chat from Budcool Ford. I recommend vaping over any stop smoking products, as I've been vaping for 10 years now. Has vaping been around that long? Man. On dessert flavors, vaping on dessert flavors, they have helped me not want a cigarette, mainly because of the tobacco flavor itself. So I guess it's like anything. Like I remember once doing completely went off sugar, did like a no sugar thing. And the no sugar diet started off with literally no sugars at all for like the first 2 weeks. Not even fruit, like no natural sugars, no processed sugars at all. And then you start adding things back in. And after you're off sugar for like a very short amount of time, it might only be 2 or 3 weeks, you start eating fruit after that and the flavors have changed. I can still remember eating kumara, and it was like the sweetest thing I'd ever had. It's what it felt like, because I'd changed my palate. I wonder if that's what's being said about the smoking. Your palate changes, and then it's not so good to go back to the old tobacco vibes. Anything else, True, before we get to old mate Damien Grant, the gift that keeps on giving?
No, let's get into libertarian Kermit the Frog.
Hey ho, Kermit the Frog here.
Taxes.
Last night on the working group, I'm talking to you guys like you don't know. You were all bloody there. I saw you all. So David Seymour is being blamed for releasing the worst people in New Zealand. I think Matthew Tukaki in this says something like, the people that used to hide in the corners of our lounges now feel emboldened to come out because of what David Seymour's doing. Also very interesting to watch this, because this is, Damien Grant has ownership in this program, how much more directive he was in the chat versus a particular chat he had a few weeks ago with Matthew Hooton, which might have potentially caused them some problems. So that's something interesting to watch out for as well. So let's start the conversation. And there is, this is pretty hard to watch. Would it be fair to say, Cho? Especially what Matt shares, because he's sharing about personal experience of being racistly being abused by racists racially. So let's just get into it though, because it's a very good conversation from those two gentlemen, and your particularly useless and awful conversation from Kermit.
The next point is, we're going to Seymour. What's Seymour getting out of this? Luxon likes to tell us that Seymour's, there's been a compromise. He's not getting his referendum, but he's getting his bill, and it's going to have its day in court. Seymour has won completely on this one. 6 months of a select committee.
Right.
Getting the bill in the public domain in this way gives him the opportunity to stomp up and down the country, stirring up racism. And I know, and we've had this debate before, but that is exactly okay. But let me finish.
I apologise. I think on the last week's show for calling somebody an anti-Semite when my blood pressure got the better of me. I was wrong to make that statement. You do not have a window into somebody else's soul. We've had this discussion with you before. It is a lazy and...
He does seem a little bit more on edge about these accusations than perhaps he once was. I wonder what that's all about.
It's always difficult when it hits close to home.
Yeah.
Seen the racism he stirs up. I've seen it. It gets sent to me.
As the Māori, that is utterly despicable to accuse somebody of racism.
Let me share something with you.
So we'll
as a Māori in the room, I feel downtrodden, I feel suppressed, I feel hurt. I honestly do feel that a pack of racists are coming for me and my people. For what? For some political outcome? So, yeah, the feeling, I'm sorry, is real. I do feel that there is a significant racist element to this discussion, and I know this because when you have a look at the people that comment on things on social media, in community groups and chats, it's just incredible. It's like a typhoon of hatred has been loose in this country by one man. Who then walks away from the grenade he's thrown in there and said, oh, no, I just want to debate. Well, actually, that debate is seeing people call other people the worst of names. And not only online, but in person, in workplaces, at parties, in bars, on streets, in supermarkets. This is what is going on as a result of this debate, and the very real fact that we're having this discussion.
Yes.
And I'm surrounded by well-meaning, lovely human beings who happen to be Pākehā. As the Māori in the room, I'm telling you, I am hurt, and that is a fact.
And is that a justification to silence the debate? Well, hold on. Let's
not talking about silence. The debate isn't silence. You can't silence a debate in this country.
How have I, as a Māori, attempted to silence this debate in this country that has been going on for decades?
Because you are saying that David Seymour is stirring up racism.
He is
by having
it's
that issue.
It's a fact. He is.
It's actually on some level quite a gracious thing that he's saying, because he's actually not calling David Seymour a racist. He's saying
he's stirring it up.
He's stirring up racists. And Damien Grant seems particularly nervous about accusations of racism at the moment. But what Matt's actually saying is the vernacular, the things that David Seymour is talking about is stirring up racists. He may or may not think David Seymour is. I don't know. But he's saying it's being stirred up. And then he's giving the evidence, which is his personal experience, that he is seeing racists and hearing from them. And this is where perhaps there is some... a word that may offend some people, but it's real life. Certainly for Matt Tukaki, and maybe many other Māori Pacifica people around the country at the moment, who from people who are feeling emboldened by this quote unquote debate.
Creating an operating environment, Damien, where people think that it's okay now to come out of the dark corners and call me a nigger. And that is a fact. People have called me that word, and I hate to say that word, but that is what I get called. Now, that makes me cry.
Simon, hasn't the left... Simon had another point.
Well, I was just going to say that if we go back to the treaty,
yes,
the treaty is a contract.
Yep.
The treaty is a legal document. It is a founding legal document in this country, and it is essentially a contract. And the contract isn't among all New Zealanders. The contract is between the Crown and Māori, their representatives being the rangatira.
I thought it was the chiefs. But no, that's a big difference. And you go back and you read.
I feel it all this and coming on.
Well, that was one of the issue in the Lowndes case. The issue was this a contract between the chiefs of iwis or was it a contract between the races, a treaty between the races? They are different concepts, Simon. The distinction, I think, is important.
Simon, hasn't the left...
No, Simon, you wanted to continue that point.
You might have to think about the meaning of rangatira, but... it is a contract between the signatories, and as a contract between the signatories, if there is a demand for the nation...
Can I just say, not to interrupt, just want to put this out there, I love Simon Wilson. He's lovely.
I would listen to that man read a phone book.
Oh, I just love what he's about to say. I know what's coming. Some of you do. I love Simon Wilson. I would bear his children, were it possible.
Between the signatories, if there is a demand for the nation as a whole thinking, are we going to rethink our founding documents? Are we going to do this process? You don't start with stirring up the racist. You start with the signatories to the document and their descendants actually having a properly formalised discussion. If the Crown thinks that we should reform the Treaty of Waitangi, the Crown needs to be talking to iwi, to the leaders of iwi, about what that might mean. Though I don't think the Crown does think that, so we shouldn't be having this discussion in the way we are having.
Let me read this fact to you. This is something that has caused me a lot of angst in the last 24 hours. It's from somebody online who says, hey, iwi, if you want to save your dying language, you can pay for it and do yourselves and do it yourselves. It's not up to the taxpayers. It has zero value. This is the sort of individual in our country that David Seymour and his ilk are stirring up. Sadly, it is the same sort of ilk that have been hiding in the dark corners of our lounge rooms across the country for some years now. And also, the rubbishing of Te Tiriti o Waitangi is not a new phenomenon. It's been going on for a long time. And so, you know, what value is this creating to a country that's trying to project itself forward as a great nation, as Christopher Luxon might call it? We're not a great nation. We're on the cusp of looking like a pack of heathen idiots.
All right. So, I love Simon Wilson. I love it because it's true. I don't love it because we've said it as well. I love it because it's true. We've used the example, I've got a contract with my bank. The neighbour doesn't get a chance to speak into my contract with my bank. And that's been the example we've been giving here all year about this quote-unquote referendum, is that there are two signatories to this document. There is Māori and there is the Crown. I'm sorry, Mr. Seymour, but no, not everybody who arrives in the country gets to participate in that contract by deciding what's what. And it's exactly right. And we've echoed that here as well. If you want to have this conversation, and remember, even Chloe says this conversation can be had, but she always says, but you don't approach it with a binary outcome. So these conversations can happen, but to have these conversations, you speak to the signatories. The Crown needs to approach Māori, or maybe Māori wants to approach the Crown and go, look, we've got this agreement, guys. We've got this deal that's going on. Should we have a look at it together? No, not the latest person who's moved here from Greenland. They're not going to have a say in our contract, because our contract is between us two. I mean, they can be the beneficiaries of it by living here and, the way we set it up, but they don't get to jump in and say, this is how this contract should be. I've been in New Zealand for 2 minutes and I don't really know your culture. Chewy.
It's an amazing point by Simon. I literally have not heard someone suggest the same thing, that if we're going to look at the treaty, we should do it with the descendants of the signatories.
Of course.
Is an amazing point to make. And I'm not I'm surprised that Damien did just dissolve like he got Thanos snapped out of it, because it is such a good point.
I mean, again, you can bring it back to the house thing. Should someone pass away? In fact, this has happened to me in the last 18 months. My father passed away, so the descendants of my father had to deal with all the contracts that my father had signed and sort them out. How's that any different? Not the neighbours in Dad's apartment block. They didn't deal with it, right? The new people, none of those. It was the descendants of my father, his children, who had to deal with all the contracts and deal with all the bank stuff and do all of that kind of stuff. Anything he'd signed, who he wasn't here any longer to respond to, his descendants had to sort it out. Just because these descendants are 6 or 7 generations ago, 8 or 9 or whatever it is, same.
I just want to talk about what Matthew said there as well.
Yep.
Now, Damien might not believe that that's true, but I think all of us have either seen it or can find it really, really easily. You duck into a Facebook comment field about anything to do with Māori. I saw the Herald put up a story the other day that a road that's being built has come across the remains of a Māori pa, and so costs on that road have increased because they've made an archaeological discovery.
Yep.
The comments below it were disgusting. And it was just a screed of anti-Māori ignorance. And you can find it anywhere on social media at the moment. This debate has given oxygen to some of this country's most hateful, ignorant people, and it's casualized those comments to a degree that I'm not comfortable with. And I think the end result of this is that we need to make racists ashamed again.
This is the reason it's also hypocrisy and ridiculousness was if that road had come across an archaeological dig that was, say, a World War I soldiers' number of graves, they wouldn't have the same. And I'm saying this arrogant, I can prove it. I know those same people making those same comments would not be making them about all of a sudden there's a cost increase to this road because they've just come across a World War I, a place that a whole bunch of World War I veterans or soldiers were laid. They wouldn't. So that's when it becomes about race. That's when the undertones are racist. Simple.
There was literally an example of that story that you described, very, very close to it. A farmer discovered in a bunch of overgrown blackberry bushes a post-World War I ex-soldiers workman's hut. And all the comments under that, it was like, oh, it must be preserved and it must be preserved for future generations and it should be bought by the state and all of this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It must be preserved because it's white people history.
Yeah. And we've
to
seen
see those stories separated by about a week.
Yeah, we've seen that here in Dunedin. I'm sure most places has. If you've got, like, for example, an incorrect spelling of a Māori place name, when it's brought up that maybe we should get the right spelling, people lose their minds. But there's been examples in Mosgiel of a Scottish settler's name spelt incorrectly on a road sign. And of course, we must fix this immediately. This must be fixed. It's exactly the same. All right, this part of the conversation is really important as well, because I don't think look, I do try and be respectful, and I'm saying this with respect. I don't think Damien gets it. I actually don't think he gets it. I don't think he understands, because he starts in this conversation to talk about when he gets abuse. And again, he has to have it explained to him how when Damien Grant receives abuse for something he's written, is very different from someone receiving abuse because of their race or their culture. Let's play this bit.
In terms of personal abuse, look, every Sunday I get a whole pile of personal abuse, and sometimes the personal abuse is enough that it made me get off Twitter for a while because the level of... So I understand what personal...
Oh, so he has to get off Twitter for a while. That's the hardship that this man has. The hardship from what Matthew's talking about goes back to things like lands being stolen. But, you know, Damien Grant has to get off Twitter. So it's same really, isn't it, Chewy? Get off Twitter for an afternoon. Lots of Māori are fighting to have their generational lands returned them. That's about the same, isn't it? I think it's pretty close. Surely.
I don't think that he's really measured these two things correctly. People might say that he sounds like a demented Kermit the Frog or he's a twice convicted fraudster. Nobody's saying that his bloodline should be ended and all of his works erased.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's go on and see how he gets it explained to him.
Enough that it made me get off Twitter for a while because the level of... So I understand what personal hatred is like because I cop an awful lot of it myself personally. But the fact that people behave in that way doesn't mean and I don't think anybody is saying, oh, we need to rip up the treaty as you said before. The issue under discussion, and I think it's a valid issue, and from my perspective it's a narrow one. What are the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi? What are they, and what do those principles, if they exist, and I'm not convinced that they do, but if they exist, what does that practically mean going forward? Because we have seen an enormous shift in the last 30 years where you have things like Mano Atawai, you have things like customary title now being debated before the courts. These are significant constitutional issues, and the fact that some people act like racist idiots doesn't mean that we can't or shouldn't have that debate. There are racist idiots in Te Pāti Māori, and some of the things that they have said has been utterly disgraceful. They are still allowed to say what they say. Simon.
Can I just say, Damien, that there is a difference between the kind of abuse that you get personally, and I get that too when I write something. And it doesn't really matter who gets more of it. I get it because of what I wrote. You get it because of what you wrote.
I get it because of what I did. I get it because of who I am.
Okay, you get it because of you.
Yes.
I get it because of me. Racism isn't directed at that guy who's a Māori because of what he did or is. It's simply he's Māori, so it's okay to abuse him. That's racism, and that is different. And that is different. Thank you. Okay,
I agree. There is.
And can I just go to your actual question there? The process we did have underway in this country and have had going for decades now has been, on the whole, enlivening, constructive, engaging, difficult, and not linear. It's gone forwards and back and everything, but it has been a process that we have that has meant that Eden Park filled up on Sunday evening with a whole lot of every type of people to do the haka, which meant that the Waikato River has been run on co-governance lines with no problem at all, and everybody involved says this is a great way to do this. It has meant that some things have been, like the maunga in Auckland, for example, hotly disputed how that should be run. It doesn't mean that it's always smooth and plain sailing by any means, but the process we've been engaged in as a live process is now being derailed by this government across a whole range of fronts. What's been taken away, unfunded, abolished and so on, and is going to be really seriously derailed when Seymour's debate kicks off.
There you go. They'll start talking in there. And look, I mean, I do have one more clip when they talk about the defunding, because he just mentioned of the Te Reo teaching resource. But Chewy, you want to speak to that first?
Yeah, I think he's spot on, and again, I could hear him talk about it forever. And I don't think that Damien Grant is equipped for this discussion. It's not his wheelhouse. He doesn't get it. He has no frame of reference.
Yep.
And I don't think you can have this discussion without empathy, and I don't think he has it.
It's interesting that you would say he doesn't get it, because I think what I heard Simon saying, and we've said this here a few times as well, like in the previous clip, not that one, is that if we don't approach this debate this conversation correctly, then we shouldn't be approaching this conversation. And it feels like people are saying, well, we're just going to be talking about the treaty principles, and they don't get it. They don't understand how this could be done properly. And when you say he doesn't get it, I think about how many New Zealanders involved in this, oh, it's our debate, we'll have a debate about it, don't get it. And I think that's probably quite a high percentage of people.
Yeah, whenever Seymour is talking about this, I think he's coming at it from like an intellectual position. It'd be a good thing to have a conversation about it. He doesn't get I get where people are saying that maybe David Seymour's not racist. He just does a lot of racist things, or he speaks to a lot of racists. I'm happy to give him the benefit of the doubt to say that he just doesn't see it. He doesn't get it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't change the fact that it's happening. That there are people that are weaponizing this to say some of the most hateful, ugly, ignorant things. And a lot of them are operating from generations of misinformation or lack of understanding or just white supremacist colonizer viewpoints that of what the treaty is. Even down to there's 2 treaties and they're not the same.
Yeah.
I found that out not that long ago. Within the last 10 years, that's come into my sort of knowledge space. How many people out there don't know the difference between te tiriti and the treaty? How many people that do know that they're 2 think that the treaty is a direct translation and that there are no problems there? This is why when those guys spray painted in Te Papa, draw a bunch of attention to it. That's why they did it. And it fucking worked. I know people that learned because that was in the news.
All right. We will play this last clip because it's only just over a minute and then we'll wrap up for the night. This is a conversation that they were having about the $30 million worth of teacher resources that this government's just cancelled.
One of the things that's happened recently is this business of teachers being able to learn Te Reo Māori in schools. In the 1960s, the Education Foundation said it was a good idea that teachers were able to communicate effectively with those in their classroom. It took decades and decades before Te Reo Māori got to a point in schools where it could not only be taught to students, but also be learnt by teachers. And now we're throwing away decades-long evidence and also advocacy to get that happening. For what purpose?
So what? This is in reference to what?
The $30 million that's been cut out of Te Reo to go into another program.
I'm not familiar with that.
So for Damien Grant to say I'm not familiar with that just kind of goes to show how he's not even switched into this conversation.
On a weekly news talk show, he did.
Yeah. So if he's not aware of that, that's been a huge story for the last week, and it's integral to understanding what's happening with Māori at the moment, yet he still has very strong opinions about what he thinks should happen. So I was surprised to hear that, but this is only got about 30 seconds to go.
Cut out of Te Reo to go into another program.
So that's the most recent thing. So what I kept on saying before, it's a litany of things that have been advocated for and built up as a solid, equitable partnership between Crown and the Māori and Māori people for many, many decades. And in one fell swoop of less than 12 months, it's all been swept away. And that's the confusing part, because if we want to have a discussion about constitutional reform in New Zealand, then let's have a discussion about constitutional reform, what that might look like in terms of
there you go, and that's the end clip. And now we're done. Chewy, have you got any other quick comments for that before we wrap up?
Not about that, but I do want to go on a wee tangent before we leave.
Okay. Kiwi Bird says the rangatira are the chiefs. Brian says, who in this government can you negotiate race relations? Kiwi Skirt says, Damien is comparing being hated for who you are with what you say. Yes, I agree. That's why he gets hate, not at all comparable to racist hate. Kiwi Bird again. Simon spoke to Damien like a disappointed father. I heard that tone. We're a te-tiriti, illiterate society. Seymour's bill is dangerous because of that, says Worming. Thank you for your super chat. And Frosty says, New Zealand is rather history illiterate society, is a rather
because we weren't taught our own history.
Illiterate.
We've taught other countries' histories.
Yeah. There's also a good comment that I messaged. I'm just trying not to get rid of the ones I haven't read. From Magenta, this is good. Like Tim Walz, just Walz said he believes women. Well, he said, I trust women, but same sort of thing. People need to believe Māori. So just like Walz said, I trust women, why can't we say I trust Māori? They're the ones who know. And the academics and stuff who are looking at this, we just trust them rather than the opposite, which it seems to be. That's me, Dewey. Have you got a tangent?
I just try to follow, like, my way of learning more about what Māori hold as important and what they think and how they're treated and that sort of thing. I follow a bunch of Māori creators, you know, from the guys in alien weaponry to weavers and artists and carvers and all of that sort of thing. It's a wonderful insight. And I see the comments that they get under their posts, that it's out there and it's worse than it's ever been. Yeah. My tangent for tonight is probably acknowledging what happened in the Middle East today.
Right, yeah, it's massive.
Or in the last couple of days, obviously a massive ground invasion of southern Lebanon, Iran responding with a massive rocket barrage, and like heaps of other places are commenting. What grabbed me this morning was the comments out of the US that Iran's rocket attack was a dangerous escalation in the area, and firing rockets at civilian targets was just an egregious crime. And there's so much wrong with that. There's so much wrong with that. There's been another country that's just been hiffing missiles at civilian targets now for almost 4 years. And it has never got the same level of commentary. It has not got the US to say that they are going to take direct action. But somehow Iran doing this will bring it. Also, the story is framed completely without the levels of attack that Israel did leading up to this. They assassinated people. They assassinated people that were negotiating. They did the attack with the walkie-talkies and the pages. And yet Iran is being fingered and said, you're the one that's escalating this. Israel bombed 4 countries this week. Iran is the one that's escalating.
It was.
I know you're going to say that I pointed out fingered. Nobody's fingering Iran.
No. What I was going to say is, watching the debate this afternoon, when the first question was asked, I was a bit like, because Tim Walz started off by talking about the Middle East, and he said he might have said this whole thing, but he was like, this all started on October the 7th. And I'm like, oh, dude, that is not going to make your progressive base happy. So that's what I saw about coming out of America today.
There's a lack of understanding about history. There's a lack of understanding about how the Middle East has been fucked with generations, and that's why we're still dealing with this sort of stuff. And there's a complete blind spot that America has for Israel.
Yeah.
As I said, my personal dream is that they sail a carrier battle group off the coast of Israel and go, if it flies and doesn't have feathers, we're going to shoot it down. Everybody calm their shit. Israel,
maybe it's allowed to, can I have a commercial tail? I mean, if it's got a commercial tail, we might want to knock those ones down.
At the moment, I wouldn't risk it. Did you see the footage of someone filming the rocket launches from their plane?
Yeah,
that's terrifying. Enforce a no-fly zone. The US can do it. The US can also cancel their arms shipments to Israel. You're sitting there going, guys, stop it, while you're arming one of them.
Yeah.
It's so beyond the pale. And it's going to get lost in the fact that the US election is going on. And we are literal days away from the anniversary of the October 7 attacks. Do you think that someone might use that as a bit of a statement point?
Mm-hmm.
I hate to see what's coming.
Last thing for tonight, I've received, I'll call it an anonymous email because I don't know if the person is okay for me to share their name. This is talking about the health conversation today. A couple of facts that you might want to discuss. A Wellington heart surgeon being told not to carry out heart valve operations because, quote, we haven't got the budget for them. This is a fact, and I am witness to his statement. Number 2, Dunedin Hospital costs were manipulated by the consultants and main contractor, and there are a ton of offsets to the cost of continuing the building of the hospital. Number 3, Lester Levy definitely wants to privatise part of the health system. There is no, quote, possibly help run the health system, end quote. This is not a suggestion, it's a goal from an individual, which we're going to take all of those statements with a grain of salt. But that is, if you've ever got some good goss, otherwise known as a lead, feel free to fire it through. History illiterate, don't learn our history. History dyslexic, learn others in the wrong order. From Paula, that's a $5 super chat, thank you. And finally for tonight, Ken says, Damien Grant can get in the sea for a $3.49 super chat.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things that we need to be wary of. Like the rich have the hand out for rewards, while the many have to work at what they can't afford. And the rest of us ain't paying attention, or maybe have questions we're too worried to mention. Other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting bees from the rice and the mice from the rats, and picking and choosing a warpath to run, and linking ourselves with the hill to die on. It's gotta come down to a welcoming vibe, with an A and a self and a higher in mind. All heavily, neither this way or that, and we'll be analyzed by what you impact. With the evil in the world trying to mess with your head, and you're sitting on the couch, you're thinking chivalry's dead. Each night, 2 nights, they're gonna sing you to bed. It's Big Hairy News.
All right, team, thanks for being with us tonight. Really appreciate you being here. A big thanks to the person who has signed up to be a patron tonight, $50. Very generous of you, especially in this month where we're probably not doing merch. It's always helpful. I'm not sure of the person who signed up yet. I'll be emailing you shortly to try and clarify your name, because it's a strange old message I've got. So thank you for that. If you want to be a part of what we do, like all of these lovely people here, patreon.com/Big Hairy News. Other than that, we'll be back tomorrow night at 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Chewy.
Cheers, fam. Have a good one.
All right, team. We'll catch you tomorrow from 9. Be safe, everyone. Hooroo.
Chew.